5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the PIO podcast, a place to discuss all public information-related topics for police, fire, EMS, and local and federal government organizations.
It was a good learning experience for a lot of us that social media is not real life.
But we have to remember the media are very rarely a target audience. They're simply that conduit.
Our words have impacts on individuals, and it may not be positive. So just being thoughtful and mindful of the words that we speak.
I think what's so interesting about this position too, and this job and this profession, is that every one of us is looking for purpose, and when we find it here, that's it.
To know is that a crisis for one is not necessarily a crisis for another.
This episode is sponsored by the Social Media Strategy Summit, the leading provider of social media education. They host annual events designed specifically for government communications professionals like you to help you build and engage your communities through social media. Visit their website at socialmediastrategysummit.com to learn more and use promo code PIO podcast for 10% off of your registration. Good afternoon. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Deputy Veronica Hill from the Richland County Sheriff's Department in South Carolina. Veronica, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. So grateful to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you could make it. I'm really glad you're here because you guys, it's an interesting thing. So when I started looking into, I do a lot of research for guests, and I come across your department, and I'm like, you got a really big public affairs unit. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but so let's hear about your background first. How did you end up in the public affairs unit?
So I am currently our public information officer. I'm also a certified law enforcement officer, which when I started being a cop 3-4 years ago, I was like, I think that would be a good use of my skills, but I wanted to police first. I was in Wichita, Kansas at the time, and I loved it. I loved being a police officer. I would get to the end of a shift and I would be like, it's over. I have to go home. And so last year, it's been about, I guess, fall of 21, my partner took a job here in the South Carolina area. I did not know anything about law enforcement here. So I sat in a newsroom and worked for a little bit. That's a good use of my management skills. I was assignment desk manager. And so I worked with every law enforcement department in the region. So it's a 9-county region in this market. And so I knew every single one of those chiefs, sheriffs, their PIOs, and, working with different ones. So it was a real great moment, a little bit of fate, a little bit of luck, a little bit of divine intervention when the best department in this area called me and said, would you please come work for us and please come be a PIO, which most of our PIOs here are sworn. So thankfully, my certification it came over for the most part. I didn't have to go to the academy. I did what's called special basic. I went and tested in various areas, the law, firearms, driving. And so I was able to become a certified law enforcement officer in South Carolina and work for just a really progressive law enforcement agency, a very active. So it's really a great place to be a PIO because it's so appreciated and celebrated, the work we do. So it's a real gift.
Awesome. So how long have you actually been working in the public affairs unit?
A year. So I'm at a year right now.
Right. So you worked somewhere in Kansas. What department did you work at in Kansas?
The Wichita Police Department, Wichita, Kansas, South Central area.
So you worked there for a while. You came over here and worked as an assignment desk reporter. Is that what you were?
An assignment desk editor. So I took all the incoming information. I assigned photographers and journalists. I led meetings. So, it was a lot of fun. Honestly, the same people who call news stations are the same kind of people that the police deal with from time to time. So it honestly was a lot of fun. And I think being a cop really helped me in news because I understood so much about jurisdiction and the court process and, things like that. So it was a fun time. I just, it the job I took when I first came here. So I was, I knew I didn't want to work in news long term, but it was a really great starting point and, really just allowing me to meet so many law enforcement professionals and figure out what would be a good department to work in. That's really invaluable.
Okay, great. For our listeners, can you tell us where Richland County is located? And I have a couple of follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in we're about 2 hours from the coast in South Carolina, Richland County. We house the state capital, Columbia. So it's a very, there's a lot of government agencies based out of here. But I would call that we were maybe in the northwest part of the state. We're the Midlands is what they call this region. There's the upstate and the coast, and we're the Midlands.
Okay, so how big is your sheriff's department, and what's the population that you guys service?
Yeah, so we, as a county, the area population we serve is about, I think, 250,000. And in our department, we have just over 700 sworn employees, so people certified law enforcement in various levels. We have a very large reserve department. We have about just over 80, I think it's 83 reserve deputies who are here on a volunteer basis. A lot of them are, are different points in their like military career, or this is like a hobby, so to say. So they volunteer with us. And then we have 140 some non-sworn positions, so administrative and civilian positions. And
I'm assuming some of those for the sheriff's department maintain the correctional side of the system and then the court system, correct?
We actually don't do anything with the jail. So there's a handful of counties in South Carolina where the jail is run through the county government. So there's essentially a different department under the county, but we do staff the courthouse here. So our Richland County Courthouse does fall under us.
Okay, a little different than some of the other states then. That's interesting. Okay. So as I was saying earlier, when I was researching your department and, looking at things, I'm going, they have a lot of public information officers and a lot of people in the public affairs office. So how are you guys staffed? Explain that.
Yeah, we have full-time. We have 4 sworn deputies who are PIO. We have, and one more if you count our chief. So our deputy chief, we have a lieutenant over our unit, and then we have 3 deputies. So myself and 2 others and our lieutenant are really doing the day-to-day stuff. And then we have 1 civilian position who also assists with event coverage, content creation, and does a lot with our website. And then we have, I think, 3 special projects deputies. So they are people who work part-time. They have worked with us in other capacities who also contribute, some one does a lot of writing for us and pitching to national publications like Police One and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. So very heavily staffed. So you guys are really doing an awful lot then with that volume of people. I mean, if you're pitching the news to magazines and to professional service magazines like Police One, you're definitely putting your agency out there on a regular basis.
Yeah. And, I think attention begets attention. So we're very fortunate because I do have some real sympathy and compassion and empathy for those who are a team of one. And that would be very challenging in our agency. One, we're very large, so we are proactive in putting out, public safety and like media releases about crimes. We also have a very large community policing element. We have really great community partnerships. We have an incredibly popular and active sheriff who believes in being out in the community. So it is one person's job every week to follow him around. He says, here are the events I'm going to that I think would, be beneficial for us to share. So we, mark our calendar to go to, this community chamber, stopping by a 4th grader's birthday party. We, really try to make that a priority as well. And then we also, do get a pretty big volume of requests for, like TV shows. And so we're involved in On Patrol Live. Earlier this year, we were the feature of a series on Netflix, Missing Dead or Alive. And then we get a lot of requests for kind of, one-off episodes, I guess you would say, on like podcasts and investigation discovery. We were on a show called High Speed Chase this year. I helped coordinate. And then sometimes specific cases are of interest. So we are on various podcasts or TV episodes for that too.
So how are you guys scheduling? If there's 4 of you, are you working 8-hour shifts? Are you working 10-hour shifts? How is that layout?
Well, we're 8 to 5 and then sometimes 5 to 8. So we do have some flexibility based on just coverage of events. So we all start with business hours, but then multiple nights a week we're, here later, and then the weekends, particularly Saturday mornings, are a very busy time. So, and again, we have such a great team dynamic that it's like, if you have an appointment come up, or, hey, I want to go to my kid's soccer game, we just switch around and support each other in that way so that things get covered. And then we're also able to have a good work-life balance.
Oh, that sounds like a really good way to do things. And then not anybody stuck on nights permanently either. So that's kind of nice as well. I'm assuming that you have a rotating on-call schedule for things that go on.
Yeah, absolutely. So each week a different PIO is what we call on-call, and then another PIO is the day person. We call it day on-call. So the day person is handling community events or sheriff appearances or interviews like that are scheduled during the day. And then the on-call person is exactly what you think in terms of the media calls. That person, we do a call forwarding service. So we have one on-call phone number, and each week it goes to a different deputy's phone. So if I'm on call that week, I'm getting the calls, which also helps with internal notifications. So the way, if there's a critical incident or, a high profile incident, that's the phone that gets the call. So you're kind of managing those current events, those breaking news moments. And so that's 1 week at a time. They're both 1 week at a time. So you switch. And now also, I think it's important is everybody's kind of cross-trained. So everyone can do everything. So we don't, we didn't just hire a PIO, and we didn't just hire social media content creator or digital communications person. It's everyone has to know how to do everything so that we can have that level of, teamwork and cross, hey, you can fill in here. Okay. Yep. Everyone can write a release. Everyone can run a camera. Everyone knows how to live stream. So everyone has those skills.
Then you answer one of my upcoming questions. Cool. So what other social media what social media platforms do you guys currently run?
So we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter /X, and then we did get on Threads this year. And we also have a TikTok, a YouTube, and a LinkedIn.
Oh, so your state is not one of those states that has banned TikTok yet?
No, which, kind of surprises me. I think maybe at the state level, they wouldn't let state employees have TikToks on state devices, but we're a county government, so it hasn't made its way down here yet.
Okay, great. That's awesome. So you've already said that because you're a large unit, everybody's cross-trained, which is great, and you guys cover each other. That's awesome. That's a great way of having a good staff in place. So let me jump to the next question. There have been a lot of recent swatting threats made to schools across the country. Have you guys investigated any of those types of incidents?
It's so unfortunate that is part of the school experience now. It feels like when I was in school that I went to school without fear, without threats. And I really, my heart hurts for students who have to sometimes regularly either encounter those kind of circulating rumors or really call in threats. So like almost every other agency, we have had to respond to. We've had to vet threat calls. We've had to vet, threats made on Instagram lives and things like that, as well as, actual hoax calls like being called in. We, have a lot of layers of vetting. So I think we've only had really one big response where someone called in a school shooting, and we had a response of 1 minute and had half the county there, which inspired a lot of confidence. I think people know if we're in a tough situation, the cops will be there. But the volume of that response, I think inspired a lot of faith in the community. And we were thankfully this was fake. So in other cases, it seems it's either someone is coming forward and saying they found a threat on social media, or someone saying, there's some kind of threat in the school. So, luckily we have policies in place to vet those. And, we have great relationships with other community, law enforcement agencies and the school districts. We have almost 100 school resource officers. We're in almost all the schools in our district. We have more SROs. Yeah, we have more SROs than some agencies have officers. There's a lot of small agencies around here. So I think that is valuable because it allows, there to be a lot of proactivity there in terms of relationship building and accessibility. And again, the sheriff here, our agency leader, is out and about. He is connected. He is involved. So I think that really we have strong partnerships in that way. So yeah, it's unfortunate that that's the reality.
That is true. How have you guys messaged for that in those events when they've happened? Are you putting it out on social? Are you putting it out on a Nixle platform or some other alert platform that you may have?
Let's take a quick break.
I think it would be useful at least to experiment, and I know some universities have started to experiment with this, but experiment with having, a required course maybe for all students entering the university. They used to have a course at my university, which was like here's how to go to college class, here's how to study and things like that. They don't have that course anymore, but instead of having something like that, have a course that show students, here's the history of free speech, here's how it.
Yeah, for us, we're social driven and then traditional media driven. So in those cases last year, we did come out on both and say, this is not a joke. And in our area, I think this is a good thing. We can hold those people accountable. So even if they are minors, we will investigate and we will prosecute. So our sheriff will get in front of a camera and say, you're not going home with mom and daddy. He'll say, you're going to go to jail. You should be held accountable for disrupting school and, in that way. I mean, it's essentially terrorizing those school communities. So our messaging is it's not a joke and we will investigate.
All right. So I'm jumping to the next question that I sent you is, there have been an increase in concerns about the posting of missing persons, particularly juvenile images, on social media. And how does the sheriff's office handle that? And as a follow-up, once the juvenile is located, how do you support social media? Or I should say, how do you update it? We, of course, take those cases seriously on a case-by-case basis. So we do have a regular webpage that features missing juveniles in terms of runaways. But if there's ever an element to it where the investigator feels this needs some more attention, there's either a criminal element or we're having a health crisis, a mental health crisis, this person needs to be found. So we will use social media and traditional media, and we post a picture and we say, this is who we're looking for. We're concerned for their well-being. And then thankfully, honestly, in my time here, we've always found them. So we have been able to go back and say, thank you for sharing this post. This young lady has been found safe. We appreciate your help. So I think that's a good community partnership, as well as I think our at least our social bases are really receptive to that. So, but we do try to, be conscientious about would extra attention help the situation? Have we utilized, the drone and the dogs and these other, we have also a program called Project Lifesaver. So it's really geared toward, maybe folks who are autistic, nonverbal, dementia, prone to walking away, prone to not being able to get in touch with. That's another tool we have that they have almost like a tracking device, like a tool that they use that we're able to find them. So there are a lot of things in place, resources we can use before we get to that. So we kind of put that as okay, well, if we need a more immediate response and we need a big, a lot of eyes looking for this young person, that's when we utilize social media. Understanding this right, so you guys have a user website, you're posting images of missing persons on your website, and then only in certain situations are you posting things on social, when they're high profile? So You're limiting the amount that you're actually putting out there. Okay. And I would assume that if they're found, their image comes off of the website, if they're located?
Yes, absolutely. We have to update that every day. So it comes down and.
Okay. All right. Well, that's an easier way of doing it in some cases. I mean, pointing people back to the page certainly reduces the amount of images that you put up about juveniles. And since it becomes problematic to delete social media posts sometimes, that might make it easier. And I don't know what your legislation is in South Carolina, but most jurisdictions now, it's almost impossible to delete social media posts from a government agency.
Yeah, and certainly if it's not covered by law, it's not a good practice. So we just try to go and update it rather than remove. Or in the case if we do have to remove, which we haven't on social media, we say like this photo has been removed for this reason, or something like that.
Since the death of George Floyd, law enforcement agencies across the country have turned towards a critical incident briefing video. How does your sheriff's office handle incidents such as either an OIS or even something as tragic as what happened to George Floyd?
Yeah, I think it's so important to make sure that correct information is made available. It's in a timely way, right? We can't wait until we have every bit of information to release, and we can't be so obsessed with getting the information out. We don't have, a thoughtful message, but, it's certainly in instances that are high profile, whether that's officer involved shootings or incidents that, maybe don't even involve us. Earlier this year, we had a case where a store owner is accused of shooting a 14-year-old and he died. And so it's like that was a case that got us some national attention, our area some national attention, some layers to it. And so, we worked with the coroner to have that news conference together. But more towards your point about the critical incident video, I think our department, we work directly with those involved in the situation, and we give them the opportunity, the most sensitivity in terms of what happened. And we give them the first rights to the video, and we let them view any video they want to see in that incident. But as far as, when these cases become of interest to the public and to the media, we're also trying to be, proactive about that as well. And so while in South Carolina, body camera is not covered under FOIA. So in most cases, it takes a court order or a subpoena to get body camera. Our sheriff elects to release it. We don't do quite the level of critical incident briefing. We release the body camera, and I think that's we want to show we're not giving unnecessary context to this, that the public really feels, well, they released the video and I saw what happened myself and I made a decision based on that. And I think that's been very well received in our community, their ability to see unedited body camera of an incident. And review it and make those determinations themselves. And also upon request, we can also in conjunction release 911 call, any historical data related to an incident or any other, Simon Sinek would say being transparent is not releasing every single detail. It's giving context to the decisions that we do make. So I think it's a both and situation. So to help the public navigate that, but the public, they're dialed in. So if you don't get your side or your ducks in a row to be able to share with them, the wrong message will go first, and it's much harder to correct than it is to be proactive.
It's important to be fast and accurate and as timely as you can, to an exception. I mean, sometimes if you're too fast, it can backfire on you, but very important to get that information out as quickly as you can, because the community will turn on you quickly, and you'll get that. There's always that person that the media interviews that heard something, saw something, but they have nothing else to back it up, and that is a person that gets on TV.
It's true. It's true.
Veronica, what surprised you when you first became in the PIO?
I think an element I've been surprised by is how much education is involved in that. We don't deal with the media, we work with the media. So in our market, the average reporter is under the 2-year mark. It's a very young market in terms of reporters. So for a general assignment reporter, I think the world expects them to be like mini experts in education and finance and technology and law enforcement. And that's just, that's so unreasonable and unattainable. So, having to offer a level of education and assistance in navigating some of the systems, I have encountered a reporter who didn't know what FOIA was in the last year. I've encountered, I've had to explain multiple times about jurisdiction. We can only investigate crimes in our county. We actually can't go investigate, things that are not in our jurisdiction or we're not invited to. So I think I was surprised by that how much time I spend explaining just the basic principles or functions of law enforcement and investigation.
Yeah, no, believe me, at my previous department, I think the market was like in the low 90s, and it was definitely an education for most of the reporters who were either first year on the job or, maybe second assignment from their first year on the job. So, yeah, definitely a lot of education that went along there. What do you enjoy most about being the PIO?
I love the variety of our work, that it's just, we never do the same thing 2 days in a row. And so I get to stretch so many creative skills in terms of, I of course knew photography before I got here, but I've just been so proud of how I've grown as an event photographer this year. And I love writing, and it's a good use of that. And, there's just never a shortage of content around here. I've never had to search for a story to tell. I mean, from actual incidents happen and how are we responding to public safety things to our very big community policing kind of priority. So we have, pardon me, we have so many great stories of our deputies helping in the community. Like a couple of weeks ago, I call it the RCSD lawn care unit, but our code enforcement who goes and serves in terms of overgrown yards or people who aren't in code when it comes to environmental things. And, the lieutenant in charge, she has such a great story. She's a 2-time cancer survivor, and she met a woman who couldn't maintain her yard because she was going to medical appointments herself. So what did they do? They did, they took care of her yard maintenance for her. And I was like, that, and she doesn't do it for the likes, she does it like this is the right thing to do. And so it just feels like every other week there's a story. Yeah. And I'm proud to be a part of that. I'm proud to be a part of that because I can think of another instance where there was a car crash this month, and one of our deputies pulled over to help in this car crash. He works in youth services, and this was a car crash when he was just out driving. He, of course, stops to help. And I think they were twins, or there were 2 young kids, car seat age kids, who were in it. And luckily they were uninjured, but the car seats were destroyed. Well, we have a great partnership with the local Walmart, and, this deputy was able to secure the donation of 2 new car seats for this family. And so it's just those stories, and it's well, I feel really fortunate to be a part of that. And then it's fun to do the day-to-day stuff. So I can, work on a story about that one day. I can be on the scene of a barricaded suspect the next day. I can be at the DARE graduation the next day where our deputies are speaking to the 5th grade who are.
That's awesome. So how are you guys?
Yeah. And so I think,
Go ahead. I cut you off. Go ahead.
That's just love it. It's so fun to be a part of.
Awesome. How do you guys handle internal messaging?
There's kind of some systems we have in place outside of our office. I found that our office is really, as far as internal things, we are event focused because we have what we call the Deputy Advisory Council, and that is really a group of people who are responsible for disseminating announcements, feedback. Here's how we're changing processes and things. So, and that system has kind of existed separately than PIO. So people look to us for what is the community involvement we will have in an event. We do have people who are often, little mini internal ambassadors and sharing stuff with us. But I would say our internal communications is pretty centralized through an advisory council.
All right. So to follow up with this, so we can close this out, is what's one question you wish that I'd asked, and how would you have answered it?
I think we got to cover such a great depth. So nothing comes to mind in terms of, what else I have to share. But, I really appreciate the opportunity to be asked at all.
Cool. Rapid fire questions then. So you ready for these?
Yes.
Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Adult drink of choice?
Dr. Pepper.
What makes you laugh?
Oh, I have 2 dogs at home that have a lot of personality. So they bring me a smile every single day.
Awesome. Do you have a hobby?
I love getting out and supporting local festivals. So anytime there's we have a Soda City Market that's every Saturday morning. This weekend is the Greek Festival at our local Greek Orthodox church. I love getting out and going to those types of things.
Excellent. Who would you choose if you had the ability to sit down and have coffee with any historical figure?
Mother Teresa. I think, she, whose life was so simple and had such a big impact. She has a quote that I'll never forget. It's, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And that's like to say the biggest impact we have is with the people directly around us. And so I carry that into my PIO work of like the most important message is the one I send to the person beside me. It's the one I send to my colleagues, and it's the one I send here locally.
Excellent. What key points would you like the listeners to take away from today's interview?
I hope they had an opportunity to hear from a different perspective. We need all kinds of folks doing this work, whether that's, in law enforcement or, government, these different arenas. We need good people sharing important messages.
Anything you'd like to add?
Thank you for having me. I found such value in your network and this podcast, and, really dialing in honestly on LinkedIn has been a great eye opener for me of what other communication professionals are doing. So I really enjoy this podcast and happy to be a part of it.
How can people best reach out to you if they'd like to connect or follow up with anything they heard?
Well, I would love to connect on LinkedIn. That's probably the best social media place to find me. So I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn.
And I will add all that into the show notes. Veronica, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
That's all for this week. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.